Hi everyone, it's Lindy on from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to have a ton of fun playing with the brand new Tim Holtz Distress Spritz, and there are a dozen colors in this brand new collection. And these are a pearlescent pigment in a clear liquid. And what I'm doing there is just showing you that that pigment is on the bottom, so you do want to make sure you shake these up really well. And the way Tim designed it, of course, is so that you can see through that packaging on the side and make sure that that liquid and that pigment is mixed together really well. And here I'm just going to show you each of those colors, and there are a dozen colors. And in the fall, there will be a storage tin available to hold 12 colors. Now I'm hoping that he does come out with some more colors in the future, and I do think that's the plan. And also there will be replacement sprayers that may be available now, but I know for sure will be available in July. These can be used with all of your other distress products, your distress mediums, and I'll do a little quick comparison of the mica stains, the distress oxide, and the distress spritzes. So these are the mica stains, and these usually come out as a seasonal product. So those three there I got in a seasonal packaging. And the names are a little bit different, so I'm just trying to show you that you can kind of match them up with your distress spritzes. But the mica stains have more seasonal names to them. And then we will also compare the distress oxide. These spritzes do not react with water the way your other products would. It's not going to give you that effect, but it certainly will work with your other distress products. So there you can see that there is some of that pearlescent pigment on the bottom. So I'm using that little mixing ball and shaking that really well. And first I'll show you that distress spritz. And we're going to be using the Peacock Feathers for all three of these, just to give you an idea of the difference. So that's what this spritz looks like. So you can see that the background is mostly white. The color is coming directly from the distress spritz. Let's go ahead and spray on the distress oxide spray. And you'll see that there's a lot more color to this. It's adding color to the background and giving you some of those darker areas of color. Now those two are the Peacock Feathers, and for this third one I got as close as I could with the Distress Mica Stain, and this is called Wonderland. So again, you can see that the mica stain has a lot more color to the background, and the mica stain and the distress spritzes both have that really pretty shimmer to them, and the distress oxide sprays do not. So I just wanted to quickly show you the difference between these. You could certainly play around with yours and do some color swatches. I'm going to try to do that later on, but I wanted to get right to creating some tags. Again, this is a little bit longer video, but I wanted to create 2 complete tags today with you. And these are the 3 products we used again. We used the Distress Spritz, and the Distress Oxide Spray, and the mica stain. So let's use these really pretty leaves. These are the Sizzix thinlits from Tim Holtz, and these are the cutout leaves. For paper, I'm going to be using the black 2-tone wood grain, and then I'm using the Tim Holtz Distress Tags. So I've got both of these. I cut that Distress black wood grain cardstock to the same size. I just traced out that tag and cut it down to size, and then I used a 1/4-inch hole punch to punch a hole in that. Let's start off with this tag, and what I'm going to do is kind of create like a half circle with these cutout leaves. They look a little bit like feathers as well, so you could certainly use your feather dies here, but I thought I would use these leaves and just kind of, again, creating that little bit of an arch. And then what I'm going to do is just tape those down with a little bit of Post-it tape, and we can run this through the Spellbinder Scout machine. And I will have a video coming out on this shortly, an unboxing video of this. So you can take a look at the Scout, and we'll do a project with that as well. So let's go ahead and run these through. I did run those through a couple of times just to make sure I die cut completely through, because there is a lot of detail to these leaves. And then I'm using my Spellbinders tool-in-one just to pop out all those little pieces. So now we have this really pretty wood grain black cardstock, and I thought it would be fun to show you what these Distress Spritz look like on black cardstock. And they're just absolutely gorgeous. They're going to pop. And I'll grab a few colors. Basically a rainbow of colors is what I'm grabbing here. And I will list all the colors that I've used down below, and all the products I'm using today down below and on my blog as well. So let's grab these colors, and I'm going to start off with that really pretty picked raspberry. Now you could dry these in between colors. I'm just going to let them do a little bit of mixing and blending. And then what I'm going to do is switch to that spiced marmalade. And then I've got the fossilized amber, a little bit of the twisted citron, and then the peacock feathers again, and some wilted violet. Again, you do want to clean off that nozzle when you're done and before you put these away. Now I saw this pretty ink that was left over, so I grabbed another one of those Distress Tags, and I'm just going to pick up some of that color. I know that it's going to blend together when I do this, but I just wanted to pick up a little bit of shimmer. We'll be using that later on for a little bit of texture and color behind our sentiment. So I'm just going to pick up that color. I'm not too worried about how I pick it up. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and heat set my tag. We'll set that other piece aside to dry. So look at this on the black cardstock. Isn't it absolutely gorgeous? It just pops like crazy off the cardstock. And then there was a couple areas I thought I wanted to darken up. And I'm kind of keeping that tag in mind as I'm spritzing these, just to make sure I have enough color back there. And I'm just using my finger to pat it out a little bit, spread it out a little bit with my finger. You could certainly use a brush. So you can add as many layers as you like. I added just a little bit more there, and then I heat set that again. And again, that pearlized look is just gorgeous. So that's going to show through from behind. Now let's work on this cover tag. And I've got 3 different colors of Distress Oxide ink to do this. And I'm starting off with the Antique Linen. And I'm going to apply that all over. And I've got a blending brush to apply that ink. And then I'm going to go to the Walnut Stain. And I won't come in all the way. I'm going to just come in part way. I've got a little bit smaller blending brush. And I'm just going to come in and leave that highlight around those leaves. And then once I like how that looks, I'm going to grab the Blk Soot, and then I'm going to go stick more to the edges, just to darken up those edges and just pull in a little bit of that color. And you can go back and add color and blend this as many times as you like. You know, with the Distress Oxide inks, you have a lot of time to do your blending, so you can just smooth out those colors. And again, I'm just trying to keep that highlight right around those leaves. And here you see me doing a little bit more blending. So once that's done, I've got that Distress Spritz, and I've got the Walnut Stain. And I did shake it up really well, and I'm just going to take the nozzle right out of the container and spatter the front of this card panel, and that is going to give me that beautiful pearlized spatter. Let's go ahead and heat set that. We will be adding a little bit more color later on, but at this point I wasn't exactly sure, so I decided to just do the Walnut Stain, and you can see that beautiful shimmer that we're getting from that. Now with the Stampers Anonymous stamps, this one is called Documented, and I'm going to grab just that little bit of text. It's almost like a little library card, like a library return card. So I'm going to just kind of stamp this, and I'll do a couple second and third generation stampings. I just want to give that background a little bit more texture and interest. So any background stamps you have, but I do love this set. We will be using it a little bit later on again. Now I've got the Tim Holtz Sizzix Thinlits. We're going to grab that one there at the top. And these are the vintage labels. And when you die cut with these, you get this beautiful border. It embosses this beautiful border around the edges. Then I'm also going to take the Curiosity Shop stamp set and grab a sentiment from that. And I'm going to just use like part of this kind of rectangular tag. So I just want to make sure that the sentiment that I select is going to fit nicely on there. And that sentiment says thoughts and theories. And I love that. It's so cool. So now what I'm going to do is just stamp that right onto one of these tags, just so that I have the same paper, the same texture that we started with before. And then I'm going to die cut this. And again, you can see that I don't need the whole tag. I just want a portion of it. Let's cut that down with the Tim Holtz titanium shears. Going back to my Scout machine, we'll run that through. And again, I do want to do that a couple of times. I want to get that nice embossed edge on this. So let's take a closer look at that. And look how beautiful that is. So now I'm going to use those same three colors we used before. I do want to heat set that ink. I use the VersaFine Onyx black ink. It is a permanent ink, but since I'm going to be doing a lot of blending over top, I wanted to make sure it was nice and dry. I didn't want that black ink to smudge at all. So I'm doing the same thing we did before, starting with the antique linen, adding a little bit of that walnut stain, and then we'll add the black soot around the edges. You could certainly stop at any point with these. When you're doing projects like this, you can stop at any point that you like, any point that you feel, oh, that looks really good, or that's good enough, or you don't want to add anymore, you don't have time. That's the nice thing about creating some of these mixed media projects, is you can really just kind of start and stop where you like. Now there's that little tag that I picked up that extra ink from before. We're just going to use that in the bottom right hand corner of our tag, just for a little bit more shimmer. And it's going to bring out that picked raspberry color just a little bit more. Now you could pick up and highlight any color that you like here. So if you prefer one of the other colors in that rainbow that we did, then grab one of those and you could spritz another tag and pick up the color that way. But I kind of like that this shimmer was in this pinky tone, and it's going to layer up just like that. But I do want to go back to some of these colors again and finish off that edge a little bit. I want to age that just a little bit around the edges, just so it ties in with the vintage look that we're going for. And with the black, I'm just adding it right to the edges, so I just pick up that paper and I can just kind of scrape that color along the edges. I've got my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. We'll go ahead and glue this down. And then our little sentiment can go right over the top. And what I want to do is pop that up a little bit, just to add a little dimension. So I've got my 3D foam tape. We're going to be adding a couple more sentiments to this, but we'll be using the quote chips to do that. So I'm going to cut away that excess and then just finish off that edge with those same two colors. Now I've got that Distress spray again in the picked raspberry, and I want to mask off my words. Again, I could have done this before, just wasn't sure, and when I added that pink, I just thought I needed a little bit more pink all over. So I'm doing the same thing, just grabbing it from the nozzle and spattering it onto the cardstock. And again, I've masked off that sentiment so that I don't get any on there. I'll heat set that, and now we can go ahead and attach this to the black wood grain cardstock. So I'm just lining those two up. and we'll glue those together. You could certainly pop this up as well if you wanted a little bit more dimension. And look at that. Look at that shimmer that's coming from behind those leaves. Now I wanted to try something and I wasn't sure it was going to work. I've got the Mica flakes and I'm going back to the Distress Spritz. And I know it's for porous surfaces. And mica isn't necessarily porous. But I think what happened is it seeped in between those layers of mica and some of the color did stay. So I'll show you that once it dries. I set that aside to dry. And now to add a little bit more interest, I'm going to use my Distress Glaze, again in the Picked Raspberry. And I've just got a piece of scrap paper there. I've got my Versamark watermark ink pad and I've got a little foam applicator tool. I just keep this applicator just for my Versamark inks. I'm going to pat on a little bit of that embossing ink onto the tag, and then I'll sprinkle on some of that Distress Glaze. And I'm just starting off with a few areas. And do remember, with the glaze, anything underneath will show through. So that's the really fun thing about the glaze, is whatever's behind it will show. What it will do is add a little bit of color and some beautiful shine. So I tapped away any excess, and then let's go ahead and heat set this. And then I'll give you a closer look, and you can see that everything behind it is going to show. So, and you'll see that beautiful shine that we get. I will be adding some more glaze later on, but at this point, again, I was just kind of building up my layers, trying to see where I was at. And then I decided to use the Tim Holtz Ideology Snapshots. I wanted a picture over in that left-hand side of the tag, kind of that would look like it's sort of in that little arch of leaves that we created. And I don't need both of these ladies, so I'm going to cut one of them out. And I went back to those same Sizzix vintage dies that we used before for our sentiment, and I'm going to die cut this. I'll do that, run that through a couple of times, again, to get that really nice finished edge. And then you can see here, I'm just going to place just this one lady on here. I'm just going to cut away the excess. So I slid that oval off towards the left, and then I'm just cutting away that other little lady, which we can save for another project. And then let's go ahead and add those colors again. So back to my 3 colors. And I'm not going to go in all the way. I just want to brighten up the center of this a little bit, then add my Walnut Stain and a little bit of Blk Soot. And I'm just going around the edges with that Blk Soot. And I did add a little bit more color with the ink pad directly, just to really darken up that edge. I've got some small foam squares from scrapbook.com, and I'm just using my Cricut weeding tool to pop the backing off of those, and then we'll place that, we'll pop that up on the left-hand side of the card. Now I've got these word tags. These are from the Ideology collection, and these are the quote chip labels. And I grabbed these little rectangular ones. They're kind of like a medium-sized one. And I decided I wanted 2 more little quotes on this tag. And so I put a bunch of them out so you could see you have lots of choices. But for the upper left, it will say, "When nothing is sure, everything is possible." And the next one will say, "We only regret the chances we didn't take." And then, of course, we already have on there thoughts and theories. So I thought this would be really fun. I'm going back to those inks to darken up that edge. It is like a thick chipboard. So you do want to make sure you finish off that edge. You could add some embossing there. I'm just going to use my Walnut Stain and a little bit of Blk Soot to darken that up. And I'm coming up over the edges a little bit, just to add a little color on the tops of the tags, even though they already do have a little bit of a vintage look to them. I'm going to glue these down flat. You could certainly pop them up as well. And then once that's all set, let's go back. This is where I decided I needed a little bit more of that distress glaze, and I want to add some on the bottom of that photograph. So I just patted on a little bit of that ink, and then I sprinkled on some of the glaze and a little bit here up on the right hand side of the tag as well. And that just sort of brings everything together. Now I've got some twine. I'm just going to tie that onto my tag. I have a couple pieces of twine there, so it'll be nice and thick up at the top. And then we'll just cut away any excess. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the velvet trims from Tim Holtz. And these are the warm colors, and I'm going to add that really pretty pink. Just cut a little piece of it and we'll tie a knot right there at the top. Kind of gives us that really rustic and elegant feel sort of together. I really love that eclectic look that you get when you combine the twine and the velvet ribbon. So let's go ahead and cut these on an angle. Now these are those mica flakes, and I really wasn't sure that they would hold the ink, but I'm moving them around there so you can see that I'm not really getting it on my fingers. It doesn't seem to be coming off. And of course, it's just going to be sitting on top of this tag anyway, so I'm not really that worried about it. I've got some Ranger multi-medium matte glue. This will dry nice and clear, and it will hold down anything, metal, fabric, mica flakes. So I'm going to go ahead and just use my Nuvo dual tip spoon and place some of these little mica flakes around this tag, and it really added a lot. Gave it a little bit of texture and dimension. And again, I think that mica kind of seeped in between the layers, that the distress spray seeped in between those layers of mica a little bit, and that's why it's working. So it's fun to play. Make sure you pull out all of your products and play with them and see what they do. You'll be surprised, like I was, that actually worked. I really didn't think that it would. So I'm moving on to the next tag. I've got a piece of Kraft Heavystk cardstock, and I'm going to be using Barn Door. And for this one, I am going to heat set these in between colors. I'll just give you the colors. I'm not sure what order I did these in, but I'm using Barn Door, Spiced Marmalade, Fossilized Amber, Twisted Citron, Peeled Paint, and we'll use a little bit of Walnut Stain. So I'm just going to spritz those on. I'm just cleaning off my background there, my glass mat, and then I'm going to dry between layers, whereas on that first tag we did not dry between the layers. But for this one, I wanted the colors not to necessarily blend together. I really just wanted to get those individual colors. And then you can come back over with some additional colors if you want to. If it's too light or you want to add a little bit more depth to it, you can always add more color. And you can see that I'm going back over this a little bit just to bring out a little bit more of that green. Now I've got the Walnut Stain and the Blk Soot, and for this one I'm going to use that Walnut Stain all around the edges and darken up those edges, just again bringing in more of that vintage feel. And I really wasn't sure if that ink would stay on top of that distress spritz. Afterwards I did take a towel and a paper towel and I just wiped off the tops of that, and that brought back a little bit of shine. But again, I wasn't too worried about it. It seemed to dry pretty well. You could also heat set it. So here I'll just grab that paper towel and just wipe that away, just to be sure that I didn't have it sitting up on top of that spray. And look at that shimmer. It's absolutely gorgeous. So that with that leftover tag that we used before to do that sentiment, I'm going to use the Vellum Scenes. These are from the Tim Holtz Ideology collection, and you can see through these. These are vellum. It's kind of a heavyweight vellum, but they're absolutely gorgeous. And you can see when you put something light behind them, they really pop. So white, or I'm going to be using that leftover tag, which is a cream color. And there's a whole bunch of scenes available. I'm going to use this one. I thought this was so pretty with the colors, the Spritz colors that we use. Just going to cut this down to size. I'm just trying to line that up. And I'll be putting that tag behind it, again, just to make this pop a little bit. So I'm leaving a little on the edges so that I can wrap it around because I don't want to put glue on the vellum. Sometimes it can show through. So I'm carefully going to wrap these around. I'm using some 1/8 inch double-sided tape. I'm removing the backing, and we'll go ahead and wrap this right around. Then we'll cut this down to size. Now at first I thought I would leave these edges of this vellum scene straight on the top and the bottom, but once I looked at it, I just thought it was a little too perfect, and I thought I needed to kind of tear away some excess. So here I did go ahead and I added some of that walnut stain around the edges. But once I was done, again, I just thought it was just a little too perfect. So I decided to tear away the edges. And I did come in with the Blk Soot as well. And I'm not loving it at this point. So let's go ahead and set that aside for now. And I'm just tearing off that little reinforcer on my tag, just so that when I glue these two together, they'll lay nice and flat against each other. So I just removed that little reinforcement, and I had just, again, traced out this Kraft cardstock using that tag, punched a hole in it with a 1/4 inch hole punch, and then we can go ahead and glue these two together. That'll just give this a little bit more substance and a place on the back for your to write something or to stamp another sentiment. And I'm just finishing off those edges with those same two inks. So now here's where I went back to this scene and decided to tear away the top and the bottom. And I really liked it so much better. I had to set it aside because I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Sometimes just it kind of comes to you as you're going along. Some of my friends and I say, like, it speaks to you. It starts to kind of like direct you what needs to be done next as you start to build your project or your tag or your card or whatever it is. So in this case, I kind of felt like it was telling me to just tear some of that excess away. Now here I am putting just a little touch of glue because it was popping up, but I was very careful about where I placed it. And then let's go back to those same quote chips, the labels that we used before, and I've grabbed a rectangular one again, but a little bit larger. This says, nature creates the greatest effects with the most limited means, and that is just gorgeous. And then I'm going back to that documented stamp set from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz, and I'm grabbing this little globe scene, and I'm going to take some of that ink off and then stamp it onto my tag. And I'm basically just going to place the tag right on top and press it down. So I've just stuck this to my glass medium mat, and then I'm placing the tag on top. I didn't want to have to place it on an acrylic block. I just thought it'd be easier to use it right on the glass medium mat. And then I want to do the bottom of the tag as well, so I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm using that same VersaFine Onyx black ink, just removing some of that excess. And then we'll go ahead and flip the tag over and stamp the bottom. You do want to be careful here if you want to keep your tag clean. So you may want to add some scrap paper as you're pressing that out. Once that was done, I've got my Kraft-stock in the warm colors, and I'm going to grab one of those colors, and I couldn't decide on sort of that mustardy color or that burnt orange color. I did decide to go with this kind of mustard color. I'm just cutting it down to the same width as that vellum scene. I'm going to tear the top and bottom, so a little bit of that will show at the top and the bottom. And then let's go ahead and ink those up, just the same as we did before. So again, I'm sorry this is a little bit longer, but I did want to show you 2 complete projects using these distress spritzes, and I wanted to show you some different techniques I use with them because they're just so fun. And again, I really hope he comes out with some more. I absolutely love them. And I'm going to just quickly tape this down. I'm adding plenty of tape. I want it to lay nice and flat. Again, you could pop this up if you wanted to. We'll go back to that Cricut weeding tool. I'm just pressing down the backing and then we'll pick up that backing really easily. Let's place this onto that mustard cardstock and then we'll place this whole piece onto our tag. Now we'll add a few more things to this. I do, again, want a nice mixed media tag, so we're going to add some metal, we're going to add some flowers, we've got the chipboard, we're going to add some really pretty velvet trim just like we did before. And I did decide to pop up this sentiment. I'm just putting some foam tape at the bottom because I have a little bit of texture there with that Vellum Scene. So I'm going to add the 3D foam tape at the bottom of that quote chip. I went back to that same velvet trims and I'm going to grab this kind of mustardy color. We'll trim that down and I tied on that twine just the same as we did before. And then let's grab these really cute little bugs. These are so cute. And I really hadn't had a use for them. I've had them for quite a while. And I thought these would be really fun. So these are the Adornments Entomology. I hope I'm saying that right. And I wanted to add a little color to this little bee that I selected. So I've got my distress crayons. And what you can do with these is just take that color and press it right down into your charm. And that color will kind of stay down in those little grooves. So I started with Fossilized Amber for the body of the little bee. Then I've got the speckled egg for the wings. And you see I have a paper towel there that I'm just wetting my finger with. A baby wipe would work really well for this too. But I was in such a hurry to add the color. I was so excited about adding some color to this that I just grabbed a little piece of paper towel and I'm just dampening my finger. It makes it easier to spread out that color onto the metal. So that's all I'm doing there, and then you can clean your fingers off in between colors. You can keep adding color to this. You can see I'm going back with that Fossilized Amber and adding a little bit more color and darkening that up. And then just kind of with your finger buff away any excess on top. And that will dry right down into those crevices. I'm going back to the Ranger Multi-Medium Matte Glue. And again, this will hold down anything metal, fabric, charms and beads, all of that fun stuff. And I'm just going to spread that out a little bit and then glue this to the tag. I thought it would be good to clamp this down and let this set and dry. So I've got my scrapbook.com reverse tweezers. Now the Sizzix Thinlits, this set I'm going to be using. And this is the Vault Funky Floral Wreath set. I grabbed a bunch of those warm pieces of cardstock, and I also grabbed the green from the cool Kraft-stock. And we'll do some flowers and leaves, and we're going to add those to our tag at the top and then around that sentiment. I thought it'd be nice to kind of give that sentiment a little bit of interest. So I've got my Walnut Stain ink, and I'm just adding some ink around the edges of the flowers and the leaves, just giving them more of a vintage look. I've got my Sizzix sculpting mat and my sculpting tool there off to the right. I'm going to just add the centers to these. So I did cut quite a few flowers from that wreath set, and I'm going to layer up this one a little bit. And then it does die cut all the little centers that you need, so you could pop those right in place. You could always add a really pretty gem in the center of these if you prefer. I'm just going to pop those centers in. And then with these sculpting tools, really easy to give them a little dimension. I'm just pressing down right in the center of those flowers and they just pop up nicely. And again, I just use that ball end of the tool to sculpt those leaves a little bit. And I'm going to use my Marvy jewel picker to pick up that little center and pop it in place. So let's go ahead and add these to the tag, and I'm going to use my 3D foam squares. These are the small foam squares to pop up some of these flowers. And then for the flowers on the bottom, I think I used a double layer of those foam squares at one point just to get it up a little bit higher than that quote chip. And again, as I mentioned earlier, all of the products I'm using today are listed and linked down below and also on my blog. So let's go ahead and add some of these leaves. I'm just going to tuck them in here and there. They're kind of long, so I cut down a few of them so that they would fit a little bit better. So don't worry about doing that, and then you can use those leftover pieces to fill in some of those open areas. So I finished up placing those leaves on off camera. Now let's take a look at the finished tags. And again, these distress spritzes are just absolutely gorgeous. Look at that shimmer coming from behind those leaves. I just love them. And I really love how they tie in with all the other products that we have in the distress line. Really nice. Just gorgeous. And the fact that it stuck to those mica flakes makes me so happy. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thank you guys for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.